people to their seats. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please take your seats? We would like to begin the lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the latest offering of the Montfort Academy's Distinguished Speaker Series. In the past, this series has hosted former Police Commissioner Howard Safir, Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania, Vice Chairman of Goldman Sachs Robert Hormats, and noted physicist and philosopher Father Stanley Yockey. Tonight, we are privileged to have the international, eminent, and award-winning poet and classicist, Professor Joseph Tusiani. We are pleased to have as our guests tonight not only our students, faculty, and Montfort families, but many from St. Mary's Parish, from our local Bedford community, and from throughout Westchester and the surrounding counties. So thank you all for coming. We also have with us tonight several of our board members and benefactors, without whom the Montfort Academy and evenings like this would not be possible. In particular, I would like to thank Mr. Lawrence Oriana, a member of our advisory board, for sponsoring this speaker series and many other outstanding programs at the Montfort Academy, and Mr. Michael Tusiani, the brother of tonight's speaker, who helped arrange for Professor Tusiani to be with us here tonight. I'd also like to welcome special friends of the school, Mr. Angelo Vivolo, and another one of our board members who is with us tonight, Mr. Eric Meyer. Now it is my privilege to introduce the founder and chairman of the board of the Montfort Academy and former Assistant Secretary of the Navy, the Honorable Richard Greco, Jr.
Well, thank you, David, and good evening, everyone. Salus et salvete, o Romani et Catoniani. Greetings and salutations to all who listen. 600 years ago in Renaissance Italy, an educator named Vittorino da Feltre said, "We call those studies liberal, which are worthy of a free man. Those studies by which we attain and practice virtue and wisdom. That education which calls forth, trains, and develops those highest gifts of body and mind which ennoble men, and are rightly judged to rank next in dignity to virtue only." This is the inspiration of the Montfort Academy, a classical high school that seeks to teach the best that man has ever thought, said, or done in the world. Now in our 6th year, we have taught 72 students in our full-time program, and more than 160 students in our Saturday morning Renaissance Man Invitational. We have attracted a distinguished faculty of nearly 20 teachers, established an online advanced placement program with Stanford University, have traveled twice to Italy to participate in archaeological excavations. We've built an award-winning robotics program, arranged internships in art and music with the Newington Cropsey Museum and the Bronx Conservatory of Music. We've aided flood victims in Mississippi and performed hundreds of hours of other acts of charity around the world. We've earned an enviable basketball record of 10-2 last year, an admirable soccer record of 4-2, and, well, an improvable baseball record of 1-3. And for 3 years in a row, we've been named as one of the 50 best Catholic high schools in America. Most importantly, through our classical curriculum of Latin, Greek, grammar, rhetoric, logic, debate, astronomy, geography, civics, government, mathematics, history, literature, and other subjects, the Montfort Academy students participate in what Mortimer Adler and Robert Hutchins a long time ago called the great conversation of ideas down through the ages. The understanding of the great ideas, and through such understanding the pursuit of wisdom, are the highest goods of the human mind and the source of all worthy inquiry, discovery, progress, and success. Much of that great conversation over the last 2,000 years has taken place in the language of Latin, through the language of Latin, and for many reasons related to the language itself, because of the language of Latin. Why Latin lives is as relevant a subject today as it was 2,000 years ago for civilization in the West, a civilization that today is often under attack. And there is no more authoritative or distinguished speaker on the subject of Latin than our speaker tonight, Professor Joseph Tusiani. Now, Professor Tusiani has just spent 1 hour in private with our students in a tour de force lecture, seminar, question and answer session. Before I introduce him formally to you, the students would like to make a special presentation to him in gratitude for the time that he has spent with us this evening. I think it will be special to him and pleasing to all of you. So I would like to ask the Director of Admissions at the Montfort Academy and our own poet in residence, Christopher Brott, to come to the podium and make a presentation.
There is something singularly charming about listening to poetry, especially poetry in a language not one's own. To hear a poem in Latin or Italian is to actually hear Latin and Italian. It is to experience their music, their cadence, their passion. A good poem read well, regardless of the language of its composition, absolutely arrests the listener. This hushed delight is part of our deepest nature. It connects us to all people everywhere. It is exquisitely human. We are, after all, human. We are beings who need to hear our stories sung and sung well. Those who sing it well, we praise. To hear a good poem is to experience the most basic literary pleasure of all, the joy that springs from sounds arranged in a beautiful order. Ironically, the more we use language for quotidian purposes, the less we note the music in it. It is too easy and too typical to allow language to atrophy until it mostly mirrors the mundane and the mediocre. But poetry performs an opposite function. It restores the sacred element in language. It reminds us that words matter because life and living matter. Poetry detonates semblance and leaves behind substance. Poetry awakens us to wonder, to life as it could and should be lived. Poetry is both whisper and thunder. We need poetry. Thus it is that those rare and precious few among us who never lose that childlike attunement to the wonder of words are what we commonly call poets. And we have a poet here this evening, a poet who commands languages the way charioteers command horses. Latin, Italian, English, and other noble steeds bend to his whim. He guides them to beauty, comedy, revelation, verisimilitude. He charges them into the heart by way of the eye and ear, and he stirs that sanguine organ to palpitate anew with deeper longing, keener rapture. It is no small thing, then, to welcome a poet, especially this poet. Sir, I bid you welcome. And I ask, too, for your pardon. We have tried in our humble way to honor you by reading 2 of your works, which we shall read in both Latin and Italian. Furthermore, and most humbly, we have tried our best to translate them for the benefit of ourselves and of our audience. Needless to say, Professor, our versions are moonlight only to the sun of your original words. Smaller, not as bright, paler in comparison, but please accept them nonetheless, for we mean them in tribute to you. I have but a few words about the first work, for surely it speaks for itself. In Concilium, the poet gets our attention by beginning with an imperative, commanding us not to be afraid. Though he confesses that he and the Muses, those fickle fabricators of fables, are not on speaking terms, he still perceives the good in life. Indeed, despite all that is bitter in life, and much of life is bitter, the poet enjoins us to cherish the hours that are given to us, and not to waste our time wallowing in worry. Worry is the vicious alter ego of wonder, and turns life into a burden. In life, what matters is not when it ends, but where it wends, and how one spends it. Fear will do us no good, he seems to sing. Love in the face of mortality is the thing.
Concilium. Ne timeas, si musa neget nova carmina nobis, canens avis salutat, omne quod tacet, neternum credas vitae mirabile donum, perenne nil manebit, omne pulvis est, vita fugit, si sola tibi detur, ora serena, minor dolor videtur iste transitus. Tempus dum culpas totum perdis sine amando. Brevem diem Venus minus brevem facit. Cur mortem meditans vis anticipare decemberem. Iems amara et acris eu cito venit.
Consiglio, non temere, se la musa mi nega nuova carmi, un uccello cantando saluta tutto ciò che tace. Niente resta, non credere eterno il dono mirabile della vita, niente resta per sempre. Tutto è polvere, fugge la vita, se ti viene data una sola ora serena. Questo transito ti sembra un dolore minore. Se incorpe il tempo, lo perdi tutto se non ami. Venere rendo meno breve il giorno breve. Perché, pensando alla morte, vuoi anticipare dicembre? L'inverno, ahimè, subito verrà, amaro e crudele.
Be not afraid. Muses deny me new songs. A singing bird greets all that is silent. Believe that life, though a miracle, is temporal. Nothing is eternal. All must fall to dust. Life escapes. If just one perfect hour is granted, this much seems a small sorrow. Time, if you accuse it, you will lose it all if you lack love. For Venus renders the day less brief. Why, meditating on death, do you anticipate December? Indeed, winter will be here soon enough, cruel and bitter.
Thank you very much, Paul Uhas, Dan Ginn, and Mark Edelson. Thank you. In our next poem, Promisio, the poet offers his words as a gift. For a poet, words are, at the end of the day, the most meaningful gift he can give. Words are to a poet what the sea must be to a ship. They are everything. The words are not meant for the man, but rather the man for the words. A good poet can put the world into words. And so it is in this poem that the poet, in almost mystical and cantatory tones, offers to make of his words a gift unlike any other ever seen on earth, a gift of light itself, an eloquent enchantment radiating unspeakable song, unlimited love, and permanent promise.
Promisio. Offero verba tibi, quedas mihi munera moris, nil odie possum redere amor melius. Sed, tibi promito, sident mihi sidera lucem, provetere loque, prosonito radios, in terra primum, mulier tu prima, videbis, gratuito carmen, lumine compositum.
Promessa, offro parole a te che mi dai doni d'amore. Niente di meglio, amore, posso oggi donarti, ma te lo prometto, se le stelle mi danno luce per il vecchio discorso e raggi per il suono, per la prima volta sulla terra, tu prima, mia donna, vedrai un carme composto di luce gratuita.
Promise. I offer you words who have given me gifts of love. On this day, my love, I can give you nothing more. Yet, this I promise you, if the stars grant me light for the old eloquence and radiance for the song, then for the first time on earth, you, my lady, will envision an enchantment composed of light freely given.
Thank you very much, Zachary Pelli, Alessandro Marchetti, and Bridget Skid. Thank you. Finally, the title of Poet Laureate seems to have originated in England during the Middle Ages. To this day, England maintains the post of Poet Laureate, as does the United States. Indeed, many states within the United States, such as New York, maintain this position. But why do we grant an official or noteworthy poet the title laureate? As it happens, the idea that laurel, as in laureate, signifies something special goes back to the very cusp of time immemorial, all the way to ancient Greece. The laurel plant was considered sacred to Apollo, and Apollo was an important god. He was the god of art, music, and light, among other things. A laurel wreath was his attribute. In their contests, be they athletic or aesthetic, the Greeks would award the winner with a crown or wreath of laurel. It was a way of showing that the winner had found favor with the gods. It meant that the winner was Apollonian, illustrious, glorious, accomplished. Professor Tusiani, since the Montfort Academy is a classical school that celebrates and contemplates the past, and because it also believes that progress must come through tradition, we wish to honor you this evening with a great symbol which has come to us through that tradition. Because you have dedicated your life to the craft of poetry, and because your dedication has exalted poetry, and since the Ars Poetica would be that much more impoverished had you never put pen to paper, we humbly offer you this authentic laurel wreath and bid you be our poet laureate. Please accept it in the spirit in which it is given, a spirit of joy, of wonder, and of profound gratitude. Grazie, professore.
Thank you, Chris. Professor, poet, playwright, novelist, translator, musical composer, maker of culture, brother, son, student, mentor, and friend. To be any of these would be a lifetime fulfilled, but for Professor Joseph Tusiani, each is but a part of his whole. Born in San Marco near Foggia and raised by his mother because his father had gone to the United States in search of a better life, Professor Giuseppe Tusiani might be the very definition of the American dream. As a boy in Italy, he served Mass under Padre Pio. In his teens, he saw his town and home bombed during World War II. But he studied and obtained his PhD from the University of Naples in 1947, defending a thesis on the English poet laureate William Wordsworth. Soon after graduation, he left Italy with his mother to rejoin his father for the first time at the age of 24. His acclaim in America as an important scholar was almost immediate, with appointments at the University of Mount St. Vincent and other universities. During his first trip back to Italy, he wrote a poem in English called The Return, which the New York Times revealed to the world had won the prestigious Greenwood Prize by the Poetry Society of England, the very first time an American had won this award, and for a poem that was not even in his native language. He achieved the rank of full professor at the City University of New York, often considered the Harvard University for those who could not afford Harvard. He became the director of the Catholic Poetry Society of America, as well as vice president of the Poetry Society of America. In the 1960s, President John F. Kennedy asked this young poet if he would consider committing his poetry to oral record for permanent exhibition in the Library of Congress. And as a sign of gratitude to his adoptive home, he translated into English for the first time Michelangelo's sonnets and poems. He also authored a children's translation of one of the greatest works of all time, Dante's Divine Comedy. The author of many volumes in 4 languages, English, Italian, the language of his native Gargano Mountains in Italy, and of course Latin. He is mostly famous for those lyrics in Latin, some of which we just heard so eloquent, earning him the reputation of the world's greatest living Neo-Latin poet. Ladies and gentlemen, to know this man is to know a highly accomplished man, but a virtuous man. To speak with this man is to speak with Virgil, Michelangelo, Dante, and Wordsworth. To hear this man is to hear the voices of ages past and how they speak to ages present and ages to come. To understand this man is to understand every man in youth, middle age, and in older years. In short, to know this man is to know the best that man has thought, said, or done in the world, to participate in the great conversation down to the ages. I present to you Professor Joseph Tusiani.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've never addressed an audience on such a topic. Because I was a professor of Italian literature, not of Latin. So some colleagues of mine here may say, why don't you speak about Italian literature? Okay, but I happen to have written so much in Latin, so I have the right qualifications, I think, to deal with such a topic. Is Latin very important today? Is it the lingua franca? Well, it could be, or perhaps it should be. Now, if you were my students, I would ask you to translate some phrases from English into Latinate English. What does it mean? For instance, I give you an ordinary sentence. When I am hungry, I do not chew, I swallow my food. Now translate it into Latinate English. It becomes, when I am famished, I do not masticate, I ingest my nutriment. You may say, but we don't speak like that. But this is not ordinary English. It's very elegant English. It is aristocratic English, I would say tuxedo English, right? So I'm sure that no young men would be fired for speaking such kind of Latin, right? Now, see, Latin is so rich with Latin words that it is a very monumental language. It is a vast language because of Latin in it. Not for every object you have two words. You have a Saxon word and a Latin word. For instance, you have tooth. This is Saxon. But then from dens, dentis, Latin, we have dentist, dentistry. So the English language grows. Foot, but from foot, from the Latin pedis, you have pedal, pedestrian, and so forth. Hand, Saxon, manual, manipulate from manus. And the English language grows. Head, and from the Latin you have capital, caput, capital, and so forth. Wall, Saxon, and then you have the murals, and the English language grows. It is immense, an immense language, because of Latin. There is so much Latin in the English language that I would almost call it a Romance language, like French, Italian, Romanian, Sardinian. Certainly English would not be what it is without Latin. Because of this, you see, imagine a musician has a double keyboard in front of him. I know what sound in a poem I want to obtain. And so I know if I should use a Saxon word or a Latin word. Take a sentence from a novel that you have read, I'm sure. Well, I'm not too sure. D.H. Lawrence's Lady Chatterley's Lover. It was forbidden when it came out. It wasn't, there was an international case. Today, I think it would pass unnoticed. D.H. Lawrence describes a tiny chick prancing in front of the coop. And there is the mother there. The mother, the hen, doesn't move. And he says, there was a tiny, tiny perky chick prancing round in front of the coop, and the mother hen clucking in terror. Mother clucking terror. You have three words. Two syllables, two syllables, two syllables. Mother clucking in terror. Notice terror is a Latin word. He didn't say clucking in fear, clucking in dread, clucking in fright, clucking in terror. What's the difference? Well, with terror, the sound is prolonged. It's not fear. Everything ends there. It's not fright. Clucking in terror. So you have a more vivid scene. You see this hen that is almost afraid of a little chick, that somebody may hurt him. So there she is, clucking in terror. Now, see, he has used, the writer, D.H. Lawrence in this case, has used a Latin word. Now, but see, when you speak Latin, you are accompanied by pictures. Pictures. Today, when you are on television, you see a program, you see, and those words are accompanied by the images, right? They show images. The same happens with other words. How? Well, I'll give you an example. Take the word muscle, the muscle of the body. It comes from musculus, and musculus means little tiny mouse. What is the connection between the muscle and the tiny mouse? Well, because in the Stone Age, you see, before man, primitive man, acquired the knowledge, the scientific knowledge, that man thought that the body moves because of some many tiny mice underneath our skin. Is that beautiful? That's why muscle, you see. Or take, for instance, the pupil of the eye. The pupil, but pupil comes from pupa, pupetta, bambola, baby doll. What's the nexus, the connection between the pupil of the eye and the baby doll and all? There is, and it's beautiful. Because if I look at myself very close to you, so close as if to join eye to eye, I see myself, my tiny face in your eye, like a tiny doll, right? So that is the first mirror of mankind. Adam discovering himself in Eve's eye. This is beautiful. Or we take the word stipulate. When you stipulate a contract, what do you do? Now, stipula in Latin means straw. So they used to take a blade of straw, used to break it into two halves. And then each went with one half, the other with the second half. To see if the contract was still valid, they would take the two halves of the stipula and join them. If the two halves formed a perfect unity, it means that the contract was valid. It was the real thing, some stipula. That's why. Or take the word consider. Consider? Well, consider when you consider something. Do you know that you walk with stars? Considus in Latin means star. So consider means cum sideribus. So you think under the shining guidance of a star, you see. To contemplate from templum, temple. So you are within a temple. So it gives somehow some religiosity to the word. Take the word profane, profanity. Even in English we have the word fane today, F-A-N-E. It means temple, right? It is used in poetry. Profanum. Now, see, those who were not admitted inside the temple were outside the temple. Profanum. So a profanity may be uttered by one who is not part of the inner sanctum yet, by one who is outside the temple. That's profanity. He is a profane, I suppose. So when you speak English, you are accompanied by all these pictures, and so you may say, "Is this important?" Yes, it is important. You see, because when you think of the quantity of verses that poets have written, for instance, take a Shelley, a Keats. They wrote so much. Why? Because everything they read fired them. You cannot have an uneducated poet because his resources are limited. But when you know all this, you see, your imagination is fired. It's fired by the tiny doll in another person's eye, by the stars that are with you when you talk, you see. So the resources of inspiration are numerous, are more numerous than those of a poet who has not had education, you see. So that's why it is important. That's why great poets produce so much. Of course, not everything they produced is great, but they produced, but because their imagination was always kindled, rekindled at every moment. So, now, does it prove that Latin is still alive today? Not yet. But think of what happens. Let's go to Japan. Latin in Japan? Well, a Japanese professor of Latin dared do something that no one had done in 20 centuries. You know that when Virgil took his last trip to Brundisium in Apulia, Brindisi, he was dying, and he, in his testament, he bade his friends to destroy his manuscript, the manuscript of the Aeneid. Thank God they didn't listen to him, or we would have lost the Aeneid. Because he was not sure of certain lines. If certain hexameters, he wrote in hexameters, were not complete. Some of them were perhaps rough, and he wanted to go over them. Because a poet changes, so even words change for him, in him. So, now, this poet, Professor Arizune Mizuno, professor of Latin at the University of Kyoto, took Virgil ad litteram, so he tried to see all the lines that he thought Virgil would have thought imperfect. And after many years of work, he published the first book of the Aeneid, Emendatus, corrected. It took audacity and perhaps naivete, but he did it in Japanese. And I read the book, and I can assure you that some of the lines really showed an improvement on some lines of Virgil. For instance, certain hexameters that had too many editions in them, you see, sounded better. But a Japanese friend, a Japanese poet, a Latin poet, about 20 years ago. Let's go now to Finland. Do you know that Finland is the country where Latin is very much cultivated? Something happened in Finland, and I would like to read a page about another man called Tuomo Pekkanen. Pekkanen. I met him in Rome, but in 2001 there was a convention of Neo-Latin poetry, and I went there and I met him for the first time. This is very important. I want to read just, otherwise some details may escape me. No. Okay. Professor Emeritus Tuomo Pekkanen of the University of Helsinki founded in 1989 Nuntii Latini, News in Latin, a weekly review of world news in classical Latin, the only international broadcast of its kind in the world, produced by YLE, the Finnish broadcasting company. Nuntii Latini is heard around the world on short or medium wave and via satellite on Radio Finland, and is now available on the internet at www.leradio1fi Nuntii. At the end of the calendar year, the news items are collected and published in a volume quickly distributed to all schools and universities. Now, to sate your curiosity, I will read just two recent news items. One of September 6, reporting the devastating earthquake in Peru, Lima, Peru, and the other announcing to the world the death of Luciano Pavarotti. Notice how concise and how perfectly Latin the two items are. 16 Augusti 2007, ingens terremotus apud Limam Peruvie, a great earthquake near Lima in Peru. That's it. Now, 6 September 2007, Lucianus Pavarotti, orbis preclarissimus teatri lirici acuta voce cantor obiit mutine. It means Luciano Pavarotti, the greatest, the most famous tenor with a sharp voice, died in Modena, Italy. That's it. Now, this Pekkanen is also well known for his Latin translation of Kalevala, the Finnish epic poem, literary glory of the nation. And believe it or not, at the observance of the 2000th anniversary of the death of Horace, a collection of traditional jazz was released, sung in Latin, to texts adapted from Horace and translated by Professor. Let's go now from Finland to Belgium. In Belgium, where there is Brussels and there is Louvain, and Louvain published all the Neo-Latin works of the century, there is a magazine called Melissa, completely in Latin. The editorials are written by a radiologist. Imagine. In Latin, and even the advertisements are in Latin. So toothpaste, advertised in Latin, so on. Now, this magazine publishes some poems and prose. Many poems of mine appeared in this magazine. And then you see, every month, some professional people, lawyers, professors, doctors, engineers, meet this month at your house, next, and over some tidbits and a glass of something, they discuss in Latin what they've read in the last issue of Melissa. And because of this, something happened. A few years later, I was in the Bronx. I received a telephone call in Latin. You can imagine a telephone call in Latin. Legatus sum. So I was shocked, after all, in Latin. And then he said, I am the new Belgian ambassador to the United Nations. And I know some poems of yours by heart, because we discussed them. And now that I'm here in New York, I would like to meet you. So I went to the United Nations for the first time in my life. I saw the rocks of the moon. Okay. And we had dinner, a lovely dinner. The Belgian government paid, And we conversed in Latin. And believe it or not, once in a while, Mrs. Willemark, that was his name, the name of the ambassador, intervened timidly in Latin. And these things do not happen in Italy anymore. Italy has destroyed Latin. Italy does not encourage Latin. Even in seminaries, it has become optional, as in the American seminaries. So in a few years we will have a priest who will not understand even Dominus Vobiscum. It is sad. It is sad. Now, then let's go now to another. Let's go to former Czechoslovakia. And there was in former Czechoslovakia a certain Jan Novak. You may know him. He's a great composer, Jan Novak. And he used Latin texts most of the time in his compositions. And sometimes he wrote very easy, facetious lines in Latin. For instance, he has a composition, but he was a student of Aaron Copland, quite a composer. He died about 20 years ago. And so he used to joke about Latin. He made Latin very popular by having puns as well. For instance, one of his poems which is at the music is Bau bau, canis sum, quid stupes? Bau bau, I'm a dog. So what's so new about it? I'm a dog. But you see, now to bark in Latin is latrare. We have it. But latro in Latin means also thief. Latro, latronis. So the dog says, latro, sed latro non sum. I bark, but I'm not a thief. You see. And he goes on like that, with this kind of Latin, you see. In Finland, by the way, see, a poem of mine is memorized in many high schools. And it's a poem that you can read. It is about the subway. Because you see, in Latin you can express everything. Even modern topics can be dealt with. Why not? Of course, we have to use some neologisms for Latin. Of course, to say, for instance, the address. How do you say address? Well, there is. We say inscriptio cursualis. Inscriptio cursualis. That's address. Now, email address. Of course, there is that. It is electronica inscriptio or inscriptio interretialis. Internet. Net is a net. Retis is the Latin word. So interretialis, cursus interretialis, and so forth as well. Now, if you go for a moment to these things that you were given, you will have on page. I will read just a few. Well, it is at the middle of the page. In veicolo subviario. In veicolo subviario means in the subway. Subway. Vehicle, subway, subviario. Okay? Now, this is very easy, the easy way out for Latin poetry. So the Latins did not have the rhymes as we have today. Dies ire, dies illa, solvet seculum, infa villa, teste David, cum sibilla, illa, no. This was born in the Middle Ages, the rhyme. They had the quantity. The quantity. What is the quantity? The quantity is made of short and long syllables. For instance, Roma, the first syllable, ro, is long. Ma depends, can be long, can be short. If it is an accusative case, if it is an ablative case, it becomes long. If it is a vocative case, it's short. And now, after so many centuries, we have lost the secret that they had. It was part of their DNA, I suppose. We have lost that. But I will tell you of the quantity before we go to the accent, which is the easy way out. And I've written here, quadrupedante putrem, sonitu quatit ungula campum. Can you see them? Good. Now, see, now, an hexameter, linear is written, it is vertical. Linear is written in hexameter. It's a line made of 6 feet. Okay? Now, before we proceed, I must tell you that we say in English an iambic pentameter. But what does it mean, iambic pentameter? What is an iamb? Well, to be or not to be. Now, a short and a long. This is an iamb. I-A-M-B. Okay? The opposite, a long and a short, is a trochee. Okay? Trochee. So the first will give iambic music. This is a trochee. Then there is this. One long and two short. Ta-ta-da. Wonderful. That is called a dactyl. D-A-C-T-Y-L. Dactyl. So dactylic music. And then there is the opposite. Ta-ta-ta. Ta-ta-ta. Okay? And this is anapest. It's called anapest. Okay? These are the 4 basic accents for a Latin hexameter. Now, in the hexameter, no trochee can be used. Only spondis. Oh, by the way. Now, this is the other one. Too long one. Ta-ta. This is a spondi. So, for the hexameter, only spondis or dactyls can be used. The trochees are used in other rhythms, but not for this. Now, generally, how did they read their poetry? Perhaps they stressed, of course, the first syllable of every foot. Now, we must have 6 feet here. This is an example. Allora, quadrupe. So, it's a dactyl, right? Ta-ta-ta. Dandepu. It's the second foot, isn't it? Dandepu. Trem soni. Now, trem soni. Another foot. Tu quatit. Another foot. Ungola ta-ta-ta. Another. And then campum. See, espondo. Now, what does it mean? It reads, Virgil describes a horse galloping on a wet soil. And this horse is galloping. So it literally means, with fourfold sound, quadrupedante soni tu, with fourfold sound, ungola the hoof, what it shakes the putrid field, literally. And they read it like this, and you will hear now the horse going away, galloping. Quadrupedante potenza di tucqua di tunco la campum. Quadrupedante potenza di tucqua di tunco la campum. By stressing the beginning of each foot, right? Quadrupedante potenza di tucqua di tunco la campum. Now, this is the quantity. But the poetry with rhymes, Sibilla, Illa, the medieval thing, is the easy way out. So I wrote some poems with the easy way and others with the quantity. Now we'll give you an example by reading just from Veicolo Subviario, the subway. Now, subway, see, what's that? I describe passengers in the subway in the morning. You notice that. There's somebody who yawns, somebody who scratches his chest, somebody who is half asleep. And then you wonder, you see the same persons every morning, and you wonder, who will not be here tomorrow? It happens. One day you don't see one that you used to see every morning. And I described Forum Station in the Bronx. Omni die, omni mense, statione fordamense, cum per nube sicut rima, lux insinuato prima, sine pace, sine pausa, laborantis semper causa, mi mobile est cubiculum subviarium vehiculum. Okay, now description. They are so tight, you know, when the train is crowded. Tanguam misere sardine stant persone matutine, semper note sed ignode, mixte, meste, mute, mode, oscitante sere quater, pater, filius, filia, mater, actua conclus. And now we hear the sound of the train. Ta, 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 ta. Unda profunda, 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 unda profunda, profunda, profunda. Now, somebody sleeps, alter dormit, alterly somebody reads, alter scratches his chest, oculoscus, another rubs his eyes, and then unta profunda, profunda, profunda. And this is easy. Now, if you go to the following one, Celi interpres, an interpreter of heaven, you have the quantity. And this is elegiac meter. The first line is hexameter, the second is a pentameter. Now, let's see the hexameter. Celi in an elision, celi interpres sum celet mysteria canto. Then, audi metellus terribilis procolest. See the pentameter, ta 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 ta, always to the actors. Verbis humanisque cessant est loquela, et fier incipiunt, musica prima Dei, humanis verbisque sicus sermo sonanse, insolitos splendent, versicolore die, ad locor omnes qui copiam cognoscere quesin, gaudia supreme magnifica harmonie. This is the quantity, gives you an idea of the quantity. I should translate it, but I think you will translate it. Now, as you see, I gave you an idea that Latin is not dead at all, as many people believe. It is alive in several nations. You can converse in Latin. You may even try. I wish that every professor of Latin would attempt at 2 lines in the quantity style. They would feel part of that world. You have the impression of being surrounded by Virgil, Augustus, or being born. You are like a man resurrected from an ancient Roman tomb, you see. It is a satisfaction that it is very hard to describe, you see. And then Finland, Belgium. And Belgium, of course, is the nation where Latin is always present because of the University of Louvain that publishes all the neo-Latin works of the century. In fact, they published even about 2 months ago this book of mine that contains about almost 400 poems written over the period of 50 years. You see, they were all unpublished, because in the other 6 volumes I have other poems, you see. And so without this university, we would not have the Latin production that we are aware of today. Now, I would say, does Latin have enemies? Yes. And the worst enemies of Latin are Latin teachers. Let me explain why. Because there are many Latin professors who look down on Neo-Latin. Because to them, you see, Latin died with the classics. So they make a living by staying with the dead, okay? But Latin, you see, lives, of course, within the neologism. But if Latin, according to them, died with the classics, who was the last classic? And they agree on one thing, that perhaps up to St. Augustine, we may still look at them with a benevolent eye. But after St. Augustine, forget it. So all the way to St. Patrick, soon after it comes the following century. St. Patrick wrote in Latin, and it's strange, St. Patrick always apologized for the poverty of his Latin. It means that the audience was very aware of the importance of Latin. They could censure him, you see. But in general, this is the attitude among university professors, at least in Italy. They look down, this neo-Latin, they call it. But you see, Latin develops like all other languages. Today, in the Italian language, you find so many new words from the computer. You find the word cliccare. It would have scandalized all Italians 20 years ago. Cliccare, to click. But it's part of the language now, because the language is a living entity. So of course it has to grow with the words. And if you import a product that you did not have, the product is known by the term with which it comes to you. And I will tell you that there are publications of neologisms. And the neologisms are always well done by philologists who have Greek and Latin in mind. So they are beautiful, clever, intelligent combinations. So, and with this, you see, I thank you all, and I wish you well for your future in Latin and in Greek. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions?
Ladies and gentlemen, il professore will take questions, and we have a microphone, and the first question traditionally goes to a Montfort student. So, please, from a Montfort student, Alessandro.
In your opinion, how important is Latin? Rather, in your opinion, how important is the role of Latin as the universal language of the Church?
You see, the beginning of the demise of Latin in Italy is due to some communist movements. Because you see, they thought that Latin was the language of the aristocrats, of the elite, and not of the poor people. So by abolishing Latin, they thought they would abolish social distances. See, I don't know if that was right. And first of all, this is the problem. It would be an easier language if Latin teachers taught their students how to speak Latin. But they don't. They should